If you're an artist over 30, you can still live your best art life. And as you watch me draw this today, learn why you actually have advantages over young artists, how to use and leverage those, and how you can still hit every single art dream that you have. And it all starts with this. Now, for most artists over 30, what I generally tend to find whenever I'm working with them, whenever I'm talking with them, is it initially comes with some sense of guilt, some sense of remorse that you're not quite where you want to be. You didn't hit that goal that you wanted to. By this point, you wanted to be here, or you wanted to have accomplished this, or you wanted to do that thing. Does this sound like you? Because a lot of times whenever I work with artists, I tend to notice that when they're over the cusp of 30 years old, then they generally don't feel very good about what they've done with their life or what they haven't done with their life either. And one of the things that I just want to put you at ease, friend, I want to let you know about this. It's okay. Like, look, it's not too late. You have not failed to launch or anything like that at all. It's just that right now you actually might be in the best season of your life to actually attack it. For some people that's older, and for some people that's going to be younger. And I think one of the things that really ignites me on this topic and really was the trigger for me to make this is that today's my birthday. I don't know how old you think I look, but I'm 39 years old today. And I don't really think about that number too much, but I've been freelancing for over a decade. And that's why I kind of have, I think, some insight into what you might be feeling right now. If you're just entering your 30s, if you're closing in on your 30s, if you're way over your 30s too. Because look, I started a lot of my business when I was in my late 20s and early 30s. And I think that we feel a ton of pressure to just be outstanding at our youngest ages. For you, you might be feeling bad that, you haven't made that shop, you haven't started that business, you're not in that industry right now. But my friend, I just want to let you know this. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But your perception of that is what's really torturing you, not your age. Art is not one of those things that you have to accomplish at a young age. You don't grow out of art. You don't age out of it. This isn't boxing. It's not pro wrestling. This isn't football. There's no peak time. You can be an artist throughout your entire life. And that's the most beautiful part of doing this thing and doing the things you want to do. At no point are you too senior to go ahead and start this journey. And I want to help you start this journey today by letting you know some really practical tips and advice throughout this so that you can apply it and then you can chase and achieve your art dreams. How's that sound? You ready to go? Now, one of the things that I hope that you realize up until this point is that the majority of your life at 30, or if you're a little over 30, whatever, it's not been yours. But I just want to let you know that you lived about the first 25 years of your life not even living your life. You lived someone else's life, you lived society's expectations of your life. That's not your life. But listen, friend, just because you have done what you're doing right now does not mean that you are a slave to doing that for the next 30 years of your life. So one of the things I want to let you know, friend, is that I want you to think not about what you have done. Nobody cares. It's okay that you got a job or you got that degree or you did or you didn't use it. It doesn't matter, friend. If you still want to be an artist and you still want to achieve those art dreams, think about how you doing that, you're now in charge of that. And what I think that we're really good at is we're great at making 3-minute decisions, even 3-month decisions, 3-day decisions, but we really suck at making 30-year decisions. So just think about it like this. You've already lived for 30 years of your life. Do you want to live the next 30 years hating it and regretting it and it's sucking? Or do you want to live it amazing? Or do you want to live it doing the things that you want to accomplish? Or do you want to live it inspiring yourself and those around you and being a good model for your spouse, for your kids, for your community, because you actually chase your dreams, chase your art dreams? Because you had minimal choice and minimal direction in the first stages of your life, now what? Now what are you going to do? Because you're ready for it, friend, aren't you? And I best think about it like this. You have to think about the opportunity cost of you not chasing that dream, of you not chasing the artist that you want to be. And to give you a personal example on this, I kind of realized that if I did not pursue my doctorate degree, I would lose out on $500,000 over the course of my lifetime. But for you, you don't know what that opportunity cost is. You don't get a bill every single time that you don't do something. You don't get a notification from your bank that says, oh, you just lost $10,000 because you didn't try to get a freelance job. Or, oh, you didn't lose $30,000 this year because you didn't open up the Etsy shop. Or, oh, you didn't lose $100,000 because you were too scared to start your comic. But that is the reality of your life, friend. And if you're ready to embrace the next 30 years of your life, buckle up, because here are some things you need to think about. Also, at this stage in your life, you should be really, really ready to invest into your project. And tell me down below, like, what is your dream project? What is the thing that you want to do? What is the thing that you want to achieve? Is it that you want to work in a professional environment? Is it that you want to go ahead and illustrate for like Magic the Gathering or Legend of the Cryptids? Or do you want to make your own board game? Or do you want to make your own miniature set for some game? Or do you want to go ahead and, I don't know, you want to make book covers? Or do you want to sell at conventions? Like, whatever that is, if you want to make a comic, whatever that is, now is the best time for you to do it, because you should have, again, a lot of that stuff that was getting in the way out of the way at this point. And I just can think about, like, as you're watching me make this speed paint right now, this is actually an artwork for a series of book covers that I've been very blessed with the opportunity to work with an author on. It's going to be a 7-part series. And you can go ahead if you want to check it out and you want to, support that person. Again, it doesn't support me, but I've got a link down below for you to check out the book. It's really cool. And if you want a little piece of me right there for a few bucks, like, you can go ahead and do that. That was really a big dream for me, to be able to have my physical product out there. And I recently achieved that in the last couple of years, and it was really cool. And I know that you would love to see your comic on a shelf, or your comic published, or you would love to see your booth set up at a convention, or your merchandise selling, or you would love to have your art YouTube channel just talked about and shared, right? You need to invest into that right now. There's no better time to do it. The world needs creators just like you, friend, and nobody else is gonna do it. Or just think about this, if you don't do it, somebody else that's not as good as you, not as smart as you, not as capable as you, and not as cool as you is gonna fill that void anyways. And then you're gonna be staring at them going, this person isn't even that good. Why do they get all of it and I don't? Because they took this step, and now I wanna encourage you, do it too. And look, no matter what season you're in your life too, this is a really important piece of advice that I wanna let you know. You should definitely hit that like and subscribe button, because I'm here to give you real actionable advice that you can do to improve your art, improve your life every single day. And if this helped you, please make sure that you share this with non-artists that you know, because I want to get the message out there. And along with that too, make sure that you pay attention to this. Now, this next tip, it comes from probably one of my biggest regrets, but also my biggest joys. So one of the things that I realized that I used to do a ton when I was in my teens, way too much, and then especially when I was in my early 20s, is I used to game for insane periods of time. Nowadays though, you should have hopefully the clarity, or if not, please let me gift you the clarity of realizing this. If you instead spent more of that time, more of those hundreds of hours that you spent on World of Warcraft or whatever you're playing, or whatever seasons that you binged and watched and they didn't really do anything for you, what if you just invested that back into your art? And one of the things that I think has been really game-changing for me is how I shaped how I consume media and how I reject it at the same time. So nowadays, here's my personal tactic, and please feel free to use it or adapt it for yourself, okay? I find it completely unacceptable for me to play any type of game unless it is a minor fraction of the percentage of time I'm investing into my artwork and into my business. And if you're not clear on that, don't worry, I got you on that today too. But overall with that, here's kind of a basic outline for it. So for me, whatever amount of time that I'm working on my artwork, let's say that I work for 10 hours on my artwork and on my business that week. I will not allow myself more than 30% of that time to invest back into it. And I will not ever allow myself to exceed 50% within a given week. The other way I would think about it is use that as your reward system. Like, so many times do we see like a new game drops and we're really excited for it, or it's a sequel, or it's, oh God, it's a remake of that, right? That's really exciting. That's awesome. Like, I want you to live your life. I'm not gonna tell you to say no to it. That's ridiculous. It's fun. It's part of what inspires you to be an artist, I bet too, right? That's been it for me. But you have to keep that in check, because otherwise I just wanna urge you to consider this. You are going down the opposite path. You're either going to need to pick a lane of being a consumer or a creator. And I have an entire video coming out on this very soon on this topic. It's very heavy. But you need to pick that lane, because literally think about this. If you're watching somebody's show excessively, if you're binging lots of content, if you are binging lots of gaming, You are not enjoying your life, you're helping somebody else enjoy their best life. You're helping another creator or a set of creators just like yourself who actually did the opposite thing that you did. And I'm not saying this to make you feel bad, but just to kind of wake you up. Because I wish somebody had said this to me earlier in my life, and it really would have been game-changing for me. But nowadays, it really doesn't bother me. Nowadays, the more that you wean yourself off, you realize that it's just an addiction. Nowadays, I recently just went like 4.5 months not even picking up my PlayStation controller. And I know you can do it too. And there's many different forms of media that you should and need to reject, because you're either gonna spend your life really dedicated and obsessed with the things that you really want to do and will actually produce a better life for you, or you can be obsessed with things that are helping somebody else accomplish their dreams at the expense of yours. Have you ever considered that? Now, another obstacle that you're definitely gonna think about is the time it's gonna take. Oh, well, Sean, it's gonna take me so much time. Do you know how much time it's gonna take for me to start that business? Do you know how old I am? I've got responsibilities and I've got to do all these things. But Sean, I've got to make sure that I take the time to do this and that at the same time. And by the time that I do this, it's gonna be over. And my friend, I just wanna urge you again to consider this. You saying that, is that a 5-minute decision or a 5-year decision? Or is that a 30-year decision? Because here's the reality, friend. Time's gonna go by and it doesn't give a crap about you. It doesn't care what you do. The world will continue to spin if you do or you don't. The world will continue to exist and society will continue to go forward, and there will be extreme strife and conflict in the world, and there's gonna be a lot of joy in the world too. And it doesn't care about you. But the only person that should care about you and whether or not you're succeeding at the level that you want to and doing the things that you want to, and even if you're just crawling towards the things that you want to, is you. Because the most gratifying experience is gonna be when you invest into yourself and when you take the time to develop it. And if it develops slow, that's okay. Listen, friend, it's taken me 4 years at this point. I can't believe I've been on YouTube for this long. 4 years to build this channel to what it is. It took me 2 years to build my mentorship to currently what it is. It's also taken me 10 years to build my freelance business to what it is. And I didn't do that all at once, and that's okay with me. And if you're wondering too, like, well, how much time should I invest into this? Because you're gonna say things like, well, Sean, I'm so busy, I do all this, I do all that. And just to help you consider this, is I would take a look at not what you can do in a day, because you'll feel bad about what you can do with a day, but instead look at it in terms of a week. So just to put this into perspective here, if you were to budget even just 5 to 10 hours a week, let's say 10, you can do 10, it's not that hard. The people in your life, they'll go to sleep. You can wake up earlier. You can do these things because you don't need to sleep 9.5 hours a day like a baby anymore if you're in your 30s. And you can use that instead to work towards your dreams. So just to put this into perspective for you, you work a 9 to 5 day job, but what are you doing from 5 to 11? Because those are your hours for yourself. You spent the first 9 hours of your day building somebody else's dream. Now it's time to build yours. And just put this in perspective. If you spend 10 hours a week, every single week for the next year into your art and growing your art business or just your art project, whatever that's gonna be, friend, that would be 40 hours every single month. And that would be 480 hours over the course of an entire year. And a lot of times we feel terrible about what we can't do in a day, and we completely overlook what we can do in a year, and we'll completely overlook the 4,800 hours that you could put into it over the course of a decade. Have you ever considered that? And if you're like, well, Sean, how much do you do? Let me just spill the beans for you. So I generally work about 15 to 20 hours a week, every single week on my art business, between my freelance work, between my mentorship, between my YouTube channel. That's generally what I do. And it's not that hard, and you get to grow into it. You don't have to do it all at once, but I did start and I expanded it outward. And you can do that too, friend, but just take it in baby steps. See what you can do. Log your time. Figure out what you can do, because time is gonna pass and it doesn't care what you do or don't do, but you should. Now, if you're like me, you might be at this stage in your life and there are people that don't quite agree with you. Are you like that? Do you have friends and family that maybe they put you down? Maybe they tell you that your art dreams are stupid, or they tell you that it's too late, or they tell you that you missed the boat on it, or that this isn't the best time, or you're too busy right now? Or do you have kids? Do you have a spouse? Do you have family members that you have to take care of or go visit very frequently because they need you? And all of those things, those are definitely barriers, but they're not prisons. And if you start to view those opinions and those people as your prisons, I'm just gonna warn you right now, that's going to be a self-imposed sentence that you will never be freed from. And one of the best things I ever did, because I grew up with a family and around people that were very dismissive of my artwork, and when you like this too, like I was generally urged into like more practical careers, more realistic careers. I'm not saying that they all did it from a cruel place, but it was definitely something that I had to learn from an early age. How do I avoid that? And the best thing I ever did with my life was just this, and especially at this age, you don't have to see your family members. You don't have to talk to certain people. You are not obligated to be around anybody that doesn't help encourage you and make you feel loved. So one of the things I'm gonna encourage you to do is very simply is to start to create and assemble your own echo chamber, okay? And I'm not saying that in like some weird narcissistic way, like, oh, you can only be around people that agree with you. But I'm just gonna say this. If people don't believe in you, if they put you down, you don't have to be around them. And you can put this in one of two ways, is that number one, you can limit your exposure to them. You can straight up tell them too. This doesn't have to be a mystery. This doesn't have to be you weird and just dodging them and you just being sketchy about it. But you can literally be like, hey man, that's really not what I want to hear. I'm at this stage of my life, like this really means a lot to me. And I really need you to support me, or else I think I'm gonna have to limit my time with you. Or you can just back off and you can just not pick up their phone calls and not respond to them. And you don't have to have anybody in your life that doesn't support you. And I think that doing this was one of the best things that I ever did, because one of the things that we are conditioned into doing is we're conditioned to make sure that we always have people around us regardless. And sometimes it can be like your friends from high school, and like if they're all a whole bunch of losers that haven't accomplished anything in their life, and then they're putting you down for their art dreams, they're not the best squad for you to hang out with, because they're not doing anything that you want to do. And we'll talk more about that friend group in a minute. If you start surrounding yourself, you'll start feeling more empowered to do the things that you want to do, and you'll feel more propelled to actually hit those. Have you ever considered this? Because if you're not doing this right now, I'm going to tell you, it's going to be a big anchor holding you down. And you just don't need that. Now, at this stage in your life, and the fact that you're even watching this video and you're wanting so bad to want to be an artist and to chase your dreams, one of the things that I'm gonna say, I'm gonna take a really educated guess on, is that you're ready to buckle down, aren't you? You're ready to finally work. You're ready to go ahead and ignore all the stuff that you used to do. And this just kind of reminds me of what Alex Hormozi says, which is that there's no best way to live your 20s. You either live your life as an overworked, underlived person, or you live your life as an overlived, underworked person, and therefore you're underachieved. So in that sense, most people are dichotomously on one end of that barbell or the other. You being at this stage in your life, 30s are typically where people take off. This is not your anchor. This is not, again, your moment to drown in just whatever decisions, good or bad, that you've made, but it's actually your opportunity here to really seize control, because you're ready to work. You're done with FOMO. You don't care what other people are saying or have done, like I'm going to talk about in this video later. You're ready to go ahead and really get into it. And one of the things that I want to encourage you on, as you're really going to start to invest into yourself, here's one philosophy I want you to adopt, which is that everything that you can do, but you just have to make it manageable. And this heavily combats the mindset of being realistic. Have you ever been told this? Oh, that's not realistic. Oh, you're too old. That's not realistic. Oh, you can't be an artist anymore. That's not realistic. Or, hey, I can do that. That's not realistic to be an artist anymore. And that's all trash advice. And one of the things I want to tell you just realistically about anybody that tells you to be realistic, although they might be coming from a good place, they're saying it while looking down on you. And the reality is that every single time that somebody says that, they're also saying, I don't think you can do that. On that note, one of the things that I would very much encourage you instead to say is, okay, how do I do that and how do I make it manageable? So for me personally, I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a doctoral candidate, I have a full-time job, I run an art business, I run a freelance business, I run a mentorship, and we're gonna talk today on how to manage that too, by the way. And instead of you saying, oh, that's not realistic, I want you to instead think about, okay, how do I manage that? How do I do that in small steps? How do I do that in increments? How do I start to build towards that? Because if you're just concerned with being realistic, that's just a completely subjective opinion. Your version of subjective reality is completely different than somebody else's. Like if I lived the life of like Ross Tran or some other huge, massive artist and YouTuber and convention seller and merchandise seller, I would probably break down. Or if he lived your life, he'd probably be like, oh, it's a piece of cake. And that all just comes down to the fact that life becomes manageable according to our expectations and according to our perceptions of what it's going to be. Are you ready to go ahead and just buckle down and do the work that you really want to do so that you can again live the next 30 years of your life proud of yourself rather than looking back and saying, I wish I did this? Because you're not going to get many more times to say, I want to live the next 30 years of my life in the best season of it. Now let's talk about a big trap that's going to come out too. Every single time that you start to talk to people that maybe you work with or the other people in your life, or how about the people that you went to school? Do you follow them on social media and they're going on big elaborate trips and they're moving up in their jobs and they're starting to have kids and they're getting married and they're going here, there, and the other place. And meanwhile, you feel like you've been frozen in time. Am I talking about you right now? Because I think that this exposes one of the worst traps that people in their 30s often figure out. And I want to tell you why all that stuff I just said is generally all just a giant ugly facade. So a lot of times artists in their 30s tend to get stuck in this comparison trap, and you're comparing yourself against your colleagues, against your friends, against your family, against the people that you went to high school with, against that jerk that you don't even like, or that girl that was always the pretty girl. She always got everything she wanted, right? And with that, you tend to get locked into this toxic cycle of you comparing yourself against somebody else. And for you in your 30s, that's not ever going to serve you, friend, okay? Because just to let you know, you're thinking about them, they're not thinking about you at all. Like, you don't even exist in their mind to the degree in which you're allowing them to live rent-free in yours. So at this stage in your life, friend, I just want to urge you, and especially if you're like coming out of your 20s into your 30s, to think about this, which is that 90% of everything you see online is complete and utter crap. Like, for example, everybody in their 20s, I remember this, was like going out and always buying the latest games and the latest system and the latest shoes and the latest threads, and they're going on big elaborate vacations here, there, and the other place. They're buying big, huge cars and they're buying houses and everything. But here's the thing. They're buying it with money that they don't have. They're throwing it on credit cards that they never pay off. They're taking all of these trips and vacations and doing exotic things to keep up appearances, and they actually can't do it, or they're doing it at the expense of things that actually matter to them, or they're buying big houses to impress other people that nobody cares about. And this sounds a lot like the rhetoric from Fight Club. Are you familiar with that? Because it's exactly kind of what Tyler Durden says. We buy things to impress people that don't even care about us. And I remember watching that movie in the 90s, and still to this day, I'm like, that is one of the most profound things I've ever realized about consumerism. And you can't think about that, or especially, here's another thing too, don't look at other people's success in relationship to yours, because you don't live their life. And a lot of times you don't know what struggles people go through in the shadows, when the lights are off, when the door's shut to their houses, and you might not want to pay the price for their success. Or even if they seemingly are more privileged than you, so what? Then guess what, friend? You have a better reason to succeed. You have a better motivation than they do, because if somebody else has gotten more than you because they've been gifted a more privileged life than you, then guess what's going to happen the second that they hit any type of friction? They're not going to know how to handle it. They're going to crumble. And you, friend, though, you've been through the ringer. If you've made it to probably around this stage in your life, you've had to deal with some tough things. You should have some mental fortitude to you. You should have some toughness, right? And use that in order to propel yourself into the future, because that is an amazing advantage that a lot of your younger colleagues don't have. But regardless, though, you comparing yourself to anybody else, it's never going to help you, but it will hurt you pretty bad. Now, on the topic of friends, you probably have had roughly the same friend group for a long time, or maybe you don't have a friend group too. And for us as artists, we tend to live the life of hermits. I tend to notice a lot. I've done this for a lot of my life too. I'm hyper selective about whom I associate myself with, both because of who they are and what they do and how they make me feel energetically when I'm around them. And one of the things I want to urge you to consider is that friend group, and especially your art friend group, okay? I think that one of the hardest things for us as artists is to connect with people. And like, for example, nowadays, it's so easy to do it. You have Facebook groups, you have Discord servers. I have a link to my Discord server down below, by the way. If you want to join, it's totally free. Go check it out. And that is one of the best advantages to being in our current time frame, in this current era, is for you to hook up with other artists online. But then here's a big thing I want to let you know about. you must make sure that you don't just be friends that are at the same level as you or lower than you. Be friends with better artists than you. Because if you are friends with better artists, they're gonna force you to level up. If you've never heard this, you are the accumulation of the 10 people that you spend the most time with in your life. And you will only achieve to the degree of like the average of what those 10 people do. So just for example here, like if you hung out with 10 alcoholics, you're probably the 11th. If you hung out with 10 delinquents, you're the 11th delinquent. And therefore, if you make sure that you insert yourself into a big group of really successful artists, of people doing the things, interested in the things that you want, it's gonna help propel you there because you're gonna have a lot of help, a lot of resources, a lot of community for you to do that. And that's why I started my Discord channel, because I didn't feel like there was a lot of good ones out there for it. That's really powerful. It's been really great for me to link up with different artists, to link up with artists that are way more successful than me, that are working in industries that I'm really curious about, that are accomplishing things that have always been of extreme interest to me. And that's also gonna do this for you, friend. It's gonna open your mind to things that you weren't aware of or possibilities you didn't know you exist. Like just for example, like I didn't know that I could start a mentorship and coach people in art until I was exposed to it. I was exposed to it through the groups that I was a part of. And if you're curious about my mentorship, by the way, as I've been talking about it through this video, there's a link down below for it. Go check it out. It'll change your life, just like it has for tons of other artists just like you. But you need to have that exposure to it to open up your mind to it, because most of the time, our minds are closed off to only what we're familiar with. You ever hear about that? Now, I have a really big reality bomb to drop on you. And you may or may not like this, but it's just the truth. And I feel, however, though, that you're mature enough to handle this and to process it in the right way. So a lot of times, especially when I'm digesting like YouTube content, there seems to be an overall softening of people's character that's leading them to absolute demise and leading them to quit art, and it's really sad for me to watch. And what I generally find is that there's a lot of creators that are in this post-season of success, and this is why I don't recommend that you listen to it. They're in this post-season of success where they're already on top of the mountain, and they can be like, okay, if I was gonna do this all over again, I would go slow and I would take it easy and I would take tons of breaks and I would monitor my feelings a ton. And all of that just relates to you staying in your comfort zone. And the thing that bothers me so much about hearing this advice is how deliriously ungrounded it is and how unmanageable it is. Because just realistically, those people that you look up to that have done the things, like they were freaking warriors, like they really killed it. Because look, they had all of the same excuses run through their heads that you have right now, but they just didn't give into it. And I think that what that promotes is a sense of entitlement. Like you have to give into yourself. You have to treat yourself. You have to be self-indulgent. And I think that that's wrapped up neatly in this bow of self-care, but really what it just promotes is self-coddling. And for you, as a mature 30-plus-year-old, you need to realize this, is that success is a trade-off, okay? And a lot of times I see artists that struggle with trying to ascend to another level, trying to go to the next plane, trying to get to the next phase in their life, but they're not willing to do anything differently for it. And that's a problem, because just to be honest, like you can't have your cake and eat it too. And a lot of people are like, well, I want success, but I want to do it on my terms. Or I want to continue to be as comfortable as I am, wasting as much time as I am, and I also want to accomplish these really big goals. And that's misaligned. You can't do that, friend. And as I'm like growing, as I'm improving my business, as I'm growing this channel and doing all the things that I want to do, I hope to never ever lose sight of this climb, this ascension, and this struggle. Because one of the things that you'll come to learn is that you will not grow whatsoever from a place of comfort. You will only grow when it gets tough. And this just reminds me of like Muhammad Ali used to do push-ups, and he was famously asked, is like, well, how many push-ups do you do? And he says, I don't count until it starts hurting. And that's because that's where the real work starts in your art, is when it gets tough, when it gets hard, when you get a little past your comfort zone, friend. And you can't have success on your terms, because therefore you only want the success that you currently have right now at the trade-off of what you could have in the future. Have you ever considered this? Now, can I tell you one of the most major advantages to being at this stage in your life that all the younger artists from you, they just don't have? Typically at this point in your life, you've lived a little bit, right? Like you have literally existed longer. And through doing that, you've experienced some things. You've experienced some highs, some lows, probably some tragedies, hopefully not too many traumas in your life too, but I mean, we all can't escape that, right? And you've also been exposed to certain things. You've been exposed to different parts of the world. You've been exposed to different sources. You've been exposed to things that your younger peers in art, they aren't familiar with. I'm gonna tell you that you learning to synthesize all of those lived experiences, that is a major advantage to all younger artists, because and my observation is that a lot of them are really good at creating really generic looking art. And that's because they're all exposed to the same exact thing. So in other words, like if it wasn't on Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, or in an anime, they've never been exposed to it, especially when they're in their teens and early 20s. But very few ever go beyond that. Very few are ever exposed to things that aren't mainstream. And especially if they're exposed to mainstream things, they don't understand what the influences of that mainstream item were that made it so great and therefore mainstream. But for you as an experienced, more lived person, wiser person, you're exposed to more things. And one of the things I can think about with this too is that when I work with people in my mentorship, I generally will try and expose them to like different ways that different things work, or different animals. Like if they're designing creatures, I'm like, hey, have you ever heard of this? You ever heard of that? And they'll be like, no, I've never heard of that. What is that thing? Like, what is a pangolin? And I'm like, oh, cool, here it is. And that really allows me to guide them in a way that's going to benefit them and also expose them to things that they've never heard of. But you've been exposed to older technologies. You've been exposed to different places around the world. You've been exposed to the different things that most younger artists are not privy to because they didn't grow up with it or it wasn't mainstream. You can actually put your lived experiences into the narratives of your work. And that's a big thing too, because I mean, by the time you're like 25, like what have you done with your life? Not much, usually like nothing at that point. Or they've all lived the same exact life, done the same exact thing. You know, they live with their parents, they went to school and they got a job, and that's what everybody else does. So there's not too much unique there unless they actually live something unique and traumatic in between that allowed them to create a really compelling story. But for you as an older artist, you have that distinct advantage. So synthesize those experiences together into your artwork and see how you can use that in order to pull an audience, in order to get them interested in your webcomic, in order to get them more interested in your illustrations, because you know how to tell a narrative, you know how to pose the body, you know how to convey a story so that you can get people interested in your shop or to go sell at conventions. Like, you are familiar with these things and you can target different audiences in a way that younger artists don't always have the information to because they haven't lived enough. Have you ever considered that? It's a big advantage. Now, one of the most popular concerns, as you've heard me pick up on this a few times today, as you've heard me talk about my day job, is the fact that a lot of us work a day job, right? And you might think right now, like, this is your biggest impediment to success. This is the number one reason why you can't do the things, you can't achieve the things that you want. Is this you, friend? Well, look, I just want to let you know, it's perfectly respectable for you to have a day job. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And for some of you, that might be in art. Some of you, it might be tertiary to art. It's art related. But for a lot of you, it might not be. It might be that you're a barista at Starbucks. It might be that you work manual construction. It might be that you do absolutely nothing that's related to your field or your interest, and you're just surviving on it. And that's okay, friend. And you can succeed with that. And to help you out, I made an entire video about how to do that right here. So go check it out. And if this helped you, share it with somebody that you know. Thanks so much. See you next time.